Good evening, everyone. It is now 6 p.m. on May 25th, 2023. I'd like to welcome you all to Richland County Council's special call meeting. At this time, the meeting will come to order. Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Branham.
Here.
Pugh.
Here.
McBride.
Here.
Livingston.
Here.
Teratio.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Barron.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
Mackey.
Here.
English.
Present.
Newton.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Next item on the agenda is item 2, adoption of the agenda. Any changes, additions, or deletions? There being none, I entertain a motion.
So move, Mr. Chair.
All right. It's been moved to properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Branham.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Teratio.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
Barron.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is item 3, second reading for our budget ordinances. Item 3A, an ordinance to raise revenue, make appropriations, and adopt an annual budget for fiscal year 2024 for Richland County, South Carolina, for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023, and ending June 30th, 2024, so as to raise revenue, make appropriations, and amend the general fund, millage agencies, special revenue funds, enterprise funds, and debt service funds, budget for Richland County, South Carolina for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023, and ending June 30th, 2024. Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
Properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Branham.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston. Teratio.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
Barron.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is item 3B, an ordinance authorizing the levying of ad valorem property taxes, which together with the prior year's carryover and other state levies and any additional amount appropriated by the Richland County Council prior to July 1, 2023, will provide sufficient revenues for the operations of Richland County government during the period from July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024. I entertain a motion.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
It's been moved to properly second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
You recognize, Madam Vice Chair?
I just wanted to point out on page 2, the third reading date. In my packet, it shows October 3rd, and I believe that is incorrect. So I just want to make sure that we correct that.
Madam Clerk?
It is correct. The third reading happens in October after we receive all of the taxes.
Is that, can I get legals? I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
That's okay. Ms. Deshpande?
That is the third reading for the millage ordinance, not the budget ordinance. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's what you meant, Madam, right? Vice Chair. Additional discussion. All right. There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Branham.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Teratio.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
Barron.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Now here comes the fun part. Item 4, second reading motions list. Beginning with item 4A, which is our millage agencies. The first motion is item 1. It's been sponsored by administration. This is a millage agency to Richland County Recreation Commission. Approve the agency's budget request for fiscal year 2024, a no mill budget. They're requesting the mill cap. And so at this time, I entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Recognize Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. A motion to accept administration's recommendation.
Second.
Properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Branham.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston.
No.
Teratio.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
Barron.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is item 2. This is Motion sponsored by administration from the Millage Agency Fund. The department is Columbia Area Mental Health, and it's approved the agency's budget request at the fiscal year '24 no mill budget. Entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Properly second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a substitute motion to move to support Columbia Area Mental Health at the requested meal cap.
Is there a second?
Second it.
It's been moved to properly second. All right. Any discussion on the substitute motion? You recognize Mr. Racio?
Just wanted to know what the impact of that mill cap would be on the taxpayer.
Mr. Don Chimande?
For the mental health, it will be 40 cents for per $1,000 resident property, and for the non-legal property per thousand, it will be 60 cents if you go to the mill cap.
Mr. Deshmande, if you don't mind staying, just stay right there, please. So from what I'm looking at, with the a no-mill budget request, that would, you can tell me these numbers are correct, but that would be $2,531,000 for Columbia Area Mental Health if it's a no-mill budget request.
That's right.
And if we go to the cap, that's $2,713,000, right?
2,714,000.
$714,000.
Those numbers are updated recently.
Okay. So that's a difference of 183,000?
Yes.
Is there any reason that we could not use ARPA funds to assist Columbia Area Mental Health with reaching or meeting their request without having to increase the millage?
As per whatever the available ARPA funds are, they are not there are no ARPA funds available for any millage agencies at this point, unless the council take any decision and free some more already allocated ARPA funds from the other purposes.
Recognize Ms. McBride.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to go on record as supporting this and looking at alternative funding for it, because mental health is one of the most serious issues that we are faced with in Richland County. And for $183,000, which is not much given the entire budget, I would like for us to look at means of supporting this.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Recognize Ms. Barron.
Thank you. If you could please repeat, Mr. Deshmande, if you could repeat, you said 40 cents for 100,000?
So if it is a legal home, which is the resident legal home, if it is 100,000 property, it will be 40 cents for that 100,000 property. If it is a commercial property, which is the rental property or business property, it will be 60 cents per 1,000 property.
You on, Ms. Barron.
And so for those residents who don't own a home, but they own an automobile, what is the impact?
And we have Deputy Auditor Mr. Alan Brown here. I think that would be a good question for Mr. Brown, if you could allow him to talk.
And that's what I was going to ask, Mr. Chair. The auditor's office is represented here, and millage-related questions have been asked to be presented to the auditor's office.
Okay. Now, Deputy Burke.
Yes, good evening, Chair, Vice
evening.
Chair. Alan Brown, Deputy Auditor, Richland County Auditor's Office. For a $20,000 vehicle, you're actually looking at a $4 increase.
Mr. Chair.
Recognize Ms. Barron.
So an automobile, to be clear, an automobile of $20,000 has a greater increase than a $100,000 property?
That
Home?
is incorrect, and I'm glad you caught that.
Oh, I'm listening. Because I'm like, oh, this impacts me too.
I told you. So far, you can't find it.
Yes, ma'am. I didn't come prepared for that, but I can do it on the fly.
And while he's doing that, Mr. Chair, I just think it's important to note that everyone does not own a home.
Right.
But they are going to be impacted financially by the decisions that we make tonight. And so that's why I asked the question. It may be minimal, but it's an impact to someone.
Right. So you're looking at a 12-cent increase. Right.
Thank you. So it's small here, but it could end up being $3 and $4 somewhere else. Thank you.
Wait, pardon me.
Recognize Ms. Newton.
Thank you. I thought I was tracking. So the 12-cent increase applies to what?
A $20,000 vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any questions or comments? All right. And none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham,
No.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride. Yes. Livingston,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes.
Weaver,
No.
Barron,
No.
Walker,
No.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right, next item on the motions docket here, if you will, is, again, from administration, millage agency being the Richland County Public Library. The recommendation is to approve the agency's budget request at the fiscal year 2024 no mill budget. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair.
You recognize Mr. Racio?
Move to approve the budget for the library at, I'll just give a dollar amount, which will be halfway between the no mill and the cap. That would take the library's budget to $32,311,229. Which, as I understand it, would have an impact on residential property amount of $100,000 at $2.80 per year. And we can do other math if people are interested. Just wanted to give that right off the bat.
Thank you, Mr. Racio. Is there a second?
Second.
Properly second. Any discussion? You recognize Ms. Barron?
I just would like to request from my colleagues, if you do have a motion for the cap and it's impacting the residents, if we could go straight across the board, not just households, but automobiles as well.
Thank you. Recognize Ms. Racio and then Ms. Newton.
Thank you. I just was going to say that I did not actually get the number for if we're going to use a $20,000 car amount. I did not get that number. So if folks want that, we would need to ask.
Deputy Auditor.
Mr. Chair?
I'm just going to ask you to remain at that podium until we get finished with all the millage agencies. And you recognize Ms. Newton.
Thank you. While he's calculating that, Ms. Teratio, could you repeat that number?
Yes. And sorry, I didn't say it well early. Right off the bat, $32,311,229. So that is just a number that is exactly halfway between the no mill and the cap.
Right. So that would increase the mill by 0.7 because the mill cap increase is 1.4. So increasing it by 0.7 will increase the tax bill 84 cents on a $20,000 vehicle, please.
It's on a $20,000 vehicle. Now, what about homes?
Okay.
Because I believe that's Ms. Barron. She wanted a comprehensive rundown of the impact on the tax bill, not just for the vehicles. Yeah, commercial, non-commercial.
Right. So legal residents, $100,000 home, if you live in it owner occupied, you're looking at $2.80 increase. And for commercial or rental home, you're looking at $4.20 increase on a $100,000 property.
We'll have to recite. Else? All right. Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham,
No.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes?
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
No.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the budget motions list is item 4. This is sponsored by administration. Millage agency is Riverbank Zoo and Gardens, and the recommendation is to approve the agency's budget request at fiscal year 2024, a no-mill budget.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, entertain a motion.
All right. Move to approve item 4.
Second.
Properly second. Any discussion? Ms. Newton, I thought I heard your voice.
I was going to make the motion. We're good.
Okay. All right, any discussion? All right, there being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham,
No.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes?
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
Could you repeat that? We're doing as, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure that the motion is as requested.
My motion is to approve staff's recommendation, which is a
Yes.
requested no mill. Okay.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the budget motions list is item 5. Millage agency is Midlands Technical College. This is their operating budget. The recommendation from administration is to approve the agency's budget request at fiscal year 2024 no-mill budget. Entertain a motion.
Chair,
You recognize Ms. McBride?
I got a question for clarification on this one.
Yes, ma'am.
Also, the agency, Midland Techs, also requested no meal, is that correct?
Well, actually, no, they requested that we go to the cap. That was their
Is that-
request.
okay.
Yeah, that's their request. And what I just read was administration's or county administration's recommendation.
Okay.
All right. Recognize Mr. Livingston.
Mr. Chair, I move that we fund the Midland Technical College operations at the cap. And keep in mind, well, I'll wait just a second. I want to speak to it, that's all.
Well, is there a second?
Second.
So move to properly second.
Walker, may
Yes,
I be
yes,
recognized?
Mr. Deshpande.
The Midland Stakes request is not at the mill cap. Their request is to a little bit more than no mill, but not the mill cap. So that's-
Whatever the request is, then thank you.
Yeah, so the request is to, actually, the dollar amount there, which is $630,063. So that's their actual request, which is a little bit more than the no mill.
Would it be right to say if you were to fund Midland Technical College at the no-mill increase, they would have less funds than they had last year?
If you fund at the no mill, they will have $44,337 less than last year's because they received the ARPA fund last year.
And plus, we have, what, an 8% CPI increase?
So the 8% CPI increase, correct me, Alan, but it get automatically calculated in the no mill calculations as well. So that the 8% CPI is calculated in the no mill as well.
I'm not sure about that.
It's automatically calculated in the mill cap, is what he's saying.
Yeah, sorry, mill cap, sorry.
Oh, okay. But my point is, you're not recommending mill cap, so it's not calculated. Thank you. So, and that's the reason for my motion is you're going to fund an agency like that at less than you funded last year with the significant increase in CPI and other increases.
Mr. Weaver and then Ms. Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So under Mr. Livingston's motion, the $7.5 million with change, is that a tax increase or not?
Yes, if we go to the mill cap, it is a tax increase, sir. Yes.
Okay, and again, can we have some idea of those numbers?
Yes, sir.
May I just
Recognize Ms. Newton.
quickly, if I may, so to make sure we're talking about the right thing. So the number that is requested here that was part of Mr. Livingston's motion was not a request for the
Right.
cap. So are you asking that he give the impact of this motion or to the cap? Because I just want to make sure I heard it correctly.
No, that's fine. I'm requesting the effect of Mr. Livingston's motion to $7.5 million.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, sir. The impact of the 7.5 million increases the mill by 0.2, which is $80 on a $100,000 home owner occupied, or commercial is $100,000 is $1.20.
That $80 doesn't sound right.
80 cents.
80 cents, thank you.
Yeah.
But
Did I say $80?
It did. It used to be.
I'm a little nervous. This is my first time.
That's okay.
I'm about to say, Deputy Auditor, you got to quit this. All right, so 80 cents on $100,000 property.
Right.
Okay.
Automobile.
And automobile, Ms. Barron's questions about automobiles.
$0.24, ma'am.
So, Mr. Deshmande, again, I can't do the math in my head here, so their request, that puts them at $7,503,630, right?
That's right.
If with the no mill budget, would that be $7,194,500?
That is updated now. So now it's 7,228,763.
What's the difference between what's requested versus no mill?
274,867.
I think you said earlier, when I asked a question about using ARPA funds to perhaps help some of these agencies or to meet their request, you said that would take an action, I guess separate action by council to do that?
That's what I believe, but I can confirm with Mr. Brown. But there are ARPA allocations are already defined by the committee and the council, so we do not have extra funds available from the ARPA unless the committee decides to freeze or unallocate the funds from the other purposes, and then we can fund these projects here.
Okay. Brown's nodding his head in agreement, so, all right. Any additional questions? Oh, Ms. Barron? Ms. Newton? Well, you both pointed at each other.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Deshmande. So I guess two things, just to be clear. So when Mr. Livingston asked if the no mill increase budget was less funding than last year, the answer that I heard was yes. And yes, because they received additional ARPA funding. So I guess I'm trying to understand, there's a difference between the money is just lower, and it's lower because they got some sort of bump or bonus from ARPA. So I'm wondering if you could clarify that for me.
So the last year they received 375,000 ARPA funds. Therefore, the last year's request was larger than their no mill budget. Their no mill budget last year was 6.8 million and some change there, and then we added 375,000 from the ARPA funds. Right now, the no mill budget is at 7.2 million, which is definitely greater than their last year's no mill budget. The last year, their no mill budget was 6.8 million and some change, and this year's their no mill budget is 7.2 million and some change. So basically, they are actually receiving 400,000 extra at the no mill level. But just because we had the 375,000 added last year, which we do not have that kind of capacity this year, therefore, the request will be, if you fund their request at the no mill level, then they will receive 44,000 and some change less than the last year.
And less because of the extra money.
Extra money, that's right.
Thank you.
Recognize Mr.
Let me clarify that, and you can tell me whether I'm correct or not.
Yes, sure.
So, because I think I'm going to get to Ms. Newton's point. If you take what we received from the general fund last year for Midlands Tech and add the ARPA fund to it, it is still less than a no mill increase this year, based on the numbers I was looking at. And I thought that was the question she was getting at.
Can you repeat that question, please, sir?
If you add what Midlands Tech operations got from the general fund last year, plus the ARPA fund, if I remember correctly, that came to like, $7,200,000 and something, right?
Yeah, so that is definitely lower. That's what I said. Like, if you do no mill plus the ARPA fund, they're still running 44,000 less. Definitely,
That's
I agree with that.
Yes, thank you.
Questions or discussion? You recognize Ms. Barron.
So I just want to just go ahead and state this, that I'm not in favor of any mill cap, any to the cap, or so I'm going to be voting no to that. But my concern here is that we're talking about a difference that Midlands Tech received from last year, and it's concerning that we did not take into consideration all the other organizations or the other agencies that, are there any? And this is a question that perhaps staff and administration can get to us later. Of the millage agencies, are there any other ones that, because I know that we gave extra money to supplement other organizations' budgets last year, just like we did Midlands Tech. And so would Midlands Tech be the only one that falls in that category?
So, so we gave last year funding to Recreational Commission, 75,000. Then after we gave Columbia Mental Health 135,000, as well as Public Library 400,000, and the Midland Tech's on the operating side 375,000. So with that, I think you're asking only Columbia Area Mental Health and the Midlands Tech College. Those are the only two entities. They are running a little short than their mill cap, no mill increase this year. Otherwise, rest of the two entities will get more than what they got last year. So only Columbia Area Mental Health, I think they will be receiving 12,000 less. And then Columbia Midland Tech College, which is around 44,000 less.
So, if I may, Mr. Chair, these are quite small amounts of money in the scheme of things, and I think ideally I would like for us to be able to make these agencies whole, if you allow me to say, but not at the cost of increasing taxes.
Questions or discussion? Newton?
Try and figure out a better way to ask this question just so that I'm completely clear. So the numbers that you were quoting for those agencies were what the no mill cap was plus extra. And so this year, what we're talking about is what this year's no mill cap is compared with the total of last year. So it's not apples to apples. So the no mill cap to no mill cap increases. It's only that because this supplemental fund, which was represented last year by ARPA, is not being added, that there's a difference in the number. So when I used to be in sales, sometimes, or different organizations, you get a bonus. Your salary is the same from year to year, but your bonus may vary. So, I mean, is that kind of what we're seeing here? So the no mill rate to the no mill rate year over year is higher?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Actually share your sentiments as far as, raising taxes. Not that I have this, that increasing taxes is anathema to me, or what have you. But I'm thinking about, far as the whole, right? I'm not looking at each one of these requests kind of in a silo, but I'm thinking, what's the aggregate going to look like? When you increase the millage for each one of these agencies. And I agree with Mr. Livingston as well. I think all of our millage agencies, provide a very invaluable, service to the residents of Richland County. And so my vote tonight, when I voted no on Columbia Area Mental Health, it wasn't because I don't support mental health, but rather I'm hoping that we can find another source of revenue to be able to make them whole, to actually meet their request, without having to increase the mill, So that's, I'm actually, I get exactly where you're coming from. And so I hope that no one out there misinterprets a no vote from Councilman Walker this evening that I don't, support mental health here in Richland County, or that I don't support Midlands Tech, and that I don't recognize their importance to educating the residents of Richland County as well as workforce development. My hope is that we can just find another way to make these organizations whole or to meet their request. So, any additional comments or discussion on this item? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham?
Chair.
I'm sorry, Madam Vice
Can you
Chair.
repeat the motion?
The motion, Mr. Livingston, this is your motion, right?
Yes, the motion is to fund Midland Technical College at the requested amount, which is less than the cap, but more than the no mill. And I don't have that exact dollar amount, but
Agency's request.
yes, but
Motion is to approve the agency's request.
I think that. Do you need a number for that, or I think the agency's request will?
That suffice, everyone, or do we need Mr. Deshpande to put a number into the record? Okay, my vice chair says she wants a number.
So it's $7,503,630. Yeah.
Ms. English?
I have a point of clarification. Vote tonight a funding at the cap or midway, and then we find dollars to make these agencies whole. Can we then go back and change it, or is it set in stone?
Second reading, so anything can happen between second and third reading. Tonight's just second reading.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, any additional questions or discussion? All right, Madam Clerk.
Brenham?
Oh.
Pugh?
Yes.
McBride?
Yes.
Livingston?
yes,
Teratio?
Yes.
Weaver?
No.
Barron?
No.
Walker?
No.
Mackey?
No?
English?
Yes.
Newton?
No.
Motion fails.
Next item on the motions list is 6, Millage Agency, Midlands Tech Capital Debt Service. They are requesting a no-mill budget, and the administration's recommendation is to approve the agency's budget request at the fiscal year 24 no-mill budget.
Mr. Chair,
You recognize Mr. Brown?
I apologize for interrupting. Even though that motion failed, something needs to be done with the actual motion itself.
Then I'm prepared to make a motion that we.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. That's an oversight on my part. You recognize Mr. Racio?
Thank you. Move to approve Midlands Tech operating at the no-mill amount.
Second.
Properly second. Any discussion? You
Mr. Chair,
recognize Mr. Weaver, then Ms. Mackey?
Is that the 7.228 what staff recommends? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Mackey?
Thank you. May I make a substitute motion?
Sure.
May I make a substitute motion to move to approve to the requested amount from Midlands Tech for the operating costs using ARPA funds?
Second. Second.
I'll second it for discussion.
You're recognized, Ms. Newton.
Thank you. What ARPA funds? I mean,
Can I answer? I don't know if that was directed at me or is that
Yes.
rhetorical? Thank you. So I am remembering our last council meeting where we voted on a category and did not use all the money in that allocated category, and there were funds that were left. And it was my understanding that the committee did not plan to award any other nonprofits in that category. So there is a dollar amount that is left in that category right now that is out there.
Ms. Newton.
thank you. That answers my question. And I guess if that's a motion that's appropriate before us, then that's something I'll consider. Since we're talking about it, I have a motion pending about where to send those unallocated funds, but I'm happy to discuss this for the good work that Midlands Technical College does.
Mr. Racio.
Thank you. And Ms. Mack, if I could address this to Ms. Mackey, could you let us know which category exactly that was? Was that the, I don't want to guess.
I know. I'm going to have to go to staff. It was not unhoused persons. No, it wasn't that one. I'm sorry. Mr. Brown, may I ask someone from your staff? I don't have it in front of me. It was not unhoused. It was another category. Anybody from the committee might remember.
If you give us a moment to try to.
Right, it was maybe $341,000.
Correct.
While they deliberate.
Recognize Ms. Barron.
Yes, so as we're talking about ARPA funds, although the committee has not made a decision on what those funds, what we are going to be using those funds for, it is still in committee. And so it's my thought that because it's in committee, that the committee has to determine what those funds would be used for. Am I wrong in my thinking? Even though that category came out of committee, the funds still are there. And we allocated X amount of dollars for each category, but they're still to be determined. It could be more funds in other categories, so it's still to be determined what we will do with any funds that are left over.
Mr. Wright.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Until, and this category, I'm not sure if the full council has voted on, but until full council votes on it, then it's whatever has been allocated. So, and I don't know the number that's left over, but yeah, whatever full council has determined at this point is what is available.
So if full council has voted on it, then Ms. Mackey's motion would be appropriate.
Yes.
Recognize. Right.
Just for clarification, a question for legal. Does not council have the authority to go back and change anything that it's voted on?
There has to be a vote on that particular matter, yes.
Right. So if it's necessary, council could come back and change that vote to address Mackey's concern.
Yes.
ACO.
Sorry. And just as a reminder, there is a time limit on spending the ARPA funds. They have to be spent by what year?
Hit it by 2026, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And we do have it actually was the unhoused category. And so I don't know if you want me to go ahead and communicate an amount.
I think you should, just for the record.
Okay, so we're showing roughly about $380,000 that has not been allocated
For that category.
for that, from that, or allocated separately out of that category.
Mr. Chair.
Recognize Ms. Mackey.
Thank you. And I will just say that I know we're in discussion. I'm completely fine if everybody wants to stay as is with ARPA, but I do know that there was discussion about finding another way. And so that to me was another way, and another way does require a motion right now. And so that was an option that I was putting forward. I'm happy to entertain other options, but I do know find another way requires one of us to make a motion to get to the other way. So if there's any other options that folks have, because we apparently did not want to increase taxes to get there, so we need another way to get there.
Ms. Barron?
Thank you. So I am all in favor of finding another way. But I do think that the committee was entrusted a task to do. And if indeed it is the will of this body to use the excess funds for making other organizations or these agencies whole, I would like to have the opportunity for the committee to have, to come together and convene and have a discussion, because there have been many discussions already about what those unused funds would go towards. And I think that entertaining that would probably change how things take place tonight.
Recognize Ms. Mack.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I am completely fine with, I guess, changing or removing my amendment or second motion for the committee to evaluate that. I would ask if the committee could do that sooner rather than later and possibly hold a committee meeting to discuss.
Ms. Mackey, I would ask, why can't we walk and chew gum? I mean, let the motion stay on the floor, and then the committee can meet in the interim. This is not the final vote. We're going to vote. When's third and final reading, Mr. Brown?
June 6th.
June 6th. And the COVID ad hoc committee meets how many times between now and June 6th?
2.
So there are 2 meetings in between. So
One, I'm sorry.
So there's 1 meeting in between. So I want to keep this horse on the track. I'd rather you not withdraw your motion. The committee will meet in between now and the final reading. So the discussion can be had while Ms. Mackey's motion remains live. Saying something, Madam Clerk. You're saying there's no meeting on the COVID ad hoc committee would not have a meeting between now and June 6th?
No, the next coronavirus meetings is on the 27th.
On the 27th of June?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You recognize Ms. McBride?
Mr. Chair, on one of the motions earlier, you also recommended that, you didn't make a motion, but you
Right.
recommended that we look at ARPA funds. So I think maybe we just need to leave it as is and let it go back to council, to committee.
Just have reservations about that, Ms. McBride. I mean, certainly,
It's falling back up.
right. Certainly, what you say is prudent, and I'm not dismissing it. But I would just sort of like to keep this moving, because if the motion passes tonight, again, we're going to have another reading. Yeah, we have another opportunity, and Ms. Barron can certainly. I would never tell her how to run her committee, but if she wanted to, she could call a meeting. I would think between now and between June 6th, as far as the COVID ad hoc committee to discuss this issue. I just want to make sure, Ms. McBride, that we're continuing to keep things moving. So, Madam Vice Chair, is your motion still on the floor, or have you withdrawn it?
All right, I have withdrawn my motion.
Okay, motion is withdrawn. All right, so what was the motion prior to Ms. Mackey's substitute motion? What was the previous motion?
Just the no mill amount.
The no mill amount. And that is with respect to, you were still on item 5, okay? So we're back to the original motion.
I didn't think it was,
Well,
Mr. Chair.
yes, Ms. McBride.
Okay, so I thought the motion was no mill, but to consider other ARPA funding. Was that?
Well, the motion made by, after Mr. Livingston's motion failed, Mr. Racio made a motion for the no mill increase. And then that is when Ms. Mackey offered a substitute motion to consider using ARPA funds which would allow Midlands Tech, allow us to meet Midlands Tech's request without raising the mill or without raising taxes.
Okay,
And then Ms. Mackey subsequently withdrew that motion after discussion.
So I thought that to consider ARPA funds, but then she went on to say to use ARPA funds. And that was the difference in the second part of the motion, in the amended version. You took away the consider. Oh,
No,
okay.
Mr. Racio's original motion was just
I thought she
to,
amended it.
no. Well, Ms.
Mackey
Mackey amended, well, she offered a substitute motion to Mr. Racio's motion, and then Ms. Mackey withdrew it. So now we're back to Ms. Racio's original motion, which is a no mill increase, which ultimately leaves Midlands Tech with less funds they received last year, which, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're back to the original motion. You recognize Ms. Newton.
I'll make a substitute motion, if that's allowed. My substitute motion would be to fund the operating budget at $7,503,630, also known as their request.
That was the original motion.
Yeah, I know, but that wasn't the original motion?
That has been, yeah. That was Mr. Livingston's original motion.
Yeah, but it.
That's all the request, okay, yeah.
After we went all of that,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that,
that's the question.
yes.
That was the original. So your substitute motion is to, pretty much grant the request of.
I can't make that motion,
Right.
never mind.
That has already been voted
Right.
down.
That's what voted on.
Yeah, so now we're back to Mr. Racio's motion. All right? So is there a second for Mr. Racio's motion?
Second.
It's been moved to properly second. Is there any discussion? And again, this motion is to grant a no mill increase. No discussion. Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
No.
Livingston,
No.
Teratio,
Yes?
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Walker,
No.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right. Next item on the budget motions list is item 6. This is Midlands Tech Capital Debt Service. They are requesting a no-mill budget, and staff recommends the agency's budget request of fiscal year 2024 at the no-mill as well. Entertain a motion.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Move the properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes?
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda, on the budget motions list, is item 7, the millage agency being Richland School District 1. The agency requests more than the no-mill budget, and staff has recommended that we approve the agency's budget request at the fiscal year 2024 no-mill budget. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the staff recommendation of $254,990, $675.
Second.
Well, is that the dollar amount? Because what I'm looking at is 251, 181,008. Was it 254? Is that number changed?
Yeah, 254.
Okay, just making sure. All right, it's been moved to properly second. Any discussion? All right, there being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
No.
Livingston,
No.
Teratio,
No.
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
No.
Newton.
I'm sorry. Can I vote yes?
You can change because it hasn't been announced yet.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
Motion approved.
Next item on the budget motions list As item 8, Millage Agency, Richland School District 2. The agency is requesting a no-mill budget, and county staff recommends that we approve the agency's budget request at a fiscal year 2024 no-mill budget. Entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Mr. Chair.
It's
Second.
been moved and properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham,
Yes?
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes?
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Recognize Ms. Barron.
Thank you. Before we proceed, if at some point, could we get what we've presently voted on, the total impact to the residents, now taking in consideration all of the millage agencies? And you don't have to give it to me now, but I think it would be helpful so that we can know what the total impact is.
Sure, we will do that. Yes.
You recognize Ms. English?
I just want to make sure, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if there are additional funds that we can utilize to support and make these agencies whole, that we can go back and ask the staff, well, not ask the staff, but to director and administrator, find those funds. Third reading, we can make it. That's my question.
It's a question.
I was trying to do the math.
Sure.
And based on my car and my house, I'm looking at about $5.20 a year based on what we voted on. So that's my question.
Mr. Wright?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Well, until the third reading, nothing is final. So you can change any of the things you just voted on, to be honest, until the third reading.
Ms. English wants to know, does she need a motion between now and third reading? I thought the motion's deadline is come and gone, right? So,
Yeah, at this point, at third reading, you can move to make a certain change on a certain line item, but that's at third reading, you can.
Thank you, sir.
questions for Mr. Wright? You recognize Ms.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, and if I have this right, just making sure. So, saying find extra money, but we have to approve a budget, and which requires numbers. And so I guess that's my thing is, yes, we can say that, but if we have not identified that, then we are approving a budget with these numbers for now. So between now and third reading, we do have to identify where that said money is. If not, we approve this. That's it. Okay.
Next item on the motions list is item 9. This is Special Revenue Fund, Department Impacted Accommodations Tax. This is approved ATAX revenue projections. The amount is $600,000.
Mr. Chair,
And you recognize Ms. Newton?
I move that we approve items 9 through 23.
Second.
9 through 20.
3.
Okay. So move to properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham,
No.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston. Teratio,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes?
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is item 24. Sponsor is administration. The fund is special revenue, department impacted, hospitality tax, promotions. This is approved funding for the capital city, Lake Murray Country. And the request, what was requested was $150,000. Committee awarded $25,400. It looks like the amount for second reading is $124,600. Entertain a motion.
So move, Mr. Chair. Second.
Moved to properly second. Any discussion? You recognize Mr. Livingston and then Ms. Newton.
Can someone tell me, last year they were awarded, What did the committee award?
So last year, the committee award was canceled, so it was 25,000. So they just received altogether 150,000 last year.
And so this year will be altogether, but the motion is it'll be 124,000.
No, 124
Plus the 25.
plus the committee, which is the 24.
Be the same amount they received last year?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And so I guess along those lines, and I can read that it says administration, I just want to be clear that this recommendation is from staff or from administration.
Eddie? No, I'm sorry. The committee awarded 25.4, but the 124,600, is that your question, Ms. Newton? Where's that coming from?
No, not where it's coming from, because it's coming from the HTAX, but
Who's making it? Yeah, that's what I mean.
correct,
That's what I
yes,
mean. Where's the
sorry.
recommendation coming from? My apologies. Mr. Brown, you or anyone on your team can address that question?
I think process-wise, anything that doesn't come from another source, when we present it to you, we basically have to say administration. So it's just a general information. It's not like we're specifically, supporting or not supporting an agency's request.
And
So these are amounts that you previously funded prior. And so that what you're having now is actually basically the same amount before you again.
And can I add something?
Yes, Mr. Deshpande.
And I think even though the motion comes from the administration, if you look at the column number 7, which is the council determination of the amount needed, which is it says the yes for that particular item. So that means like we still need the amount from the council for that particular motion. So you still have the opportunity to change that amount upward or downward, yes.
Okay, so just so that I am clear in my mind, or clearer, so, and of course, council can determine an amount, but here, it says it's an administration recommendation, but what you're actually saying is, you just had to put somebody's name and you put yours, and this amount is what makes the amount here equal the amount from last year. Is that what I heard?
That is also, but also their original request was 150,000. So that's what we basically are recommending. Their request received 150,000. So that's what we are recommending, the entire amount.
Yes, I guess, when is a request not a request? This is what I'm trying to get to, but I'm not sure. I think, I guess I have an answer. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair. Well, my question is similar to Ms. Newton's, but I don't have an answer yet. In terms of who made the request for $124,600? Did that request come in from this entity? Did it come in through a letter? I'm not following who made the request.
So 150,000 was requested through that by that entity when they did the HTAX application.
I understand, okay, can I?
Sure, go ahead, Ms. McBride.
I understand that, and the committee awarded the $25,400. I'm trying to determine where the $124,600 came from.
So that was basically the 150,000 minus the awarded amount by the committee. The difference is 124,000. So that was calculated by the staff for the budget office.
So you just put this down
Yeah.
from the request, that was 150,000, and the committee awarded the 25,400. So you just put this as the balance of.
That's right.
Right. So
I'm just trying to get a process, Mr.
Okay, so Mr. Deshpande, so last year, this organization received 150,000 last year?
That's right.
Okay, and so, but the committee awarded them 25,400 this year.
That's right.
And so you all looking at last year's number, and along with what they requested this year, said, well, to get them to what they received last year and to meet their request for this year, you just recommended the difference between 25,400 and the 150,000, right?
That's right.
Okay, got it. Does that make sense, Ms. McBride?
Well, in terms of a process, it doesn't.
Right,
Because
but-
with the process, a motion has to come from someone, from the administration or council. Or are we accepting the motion straight from this entity? The request.
These-
So I'm not following. I understand what you said and everything. I'm just not seeing a process in place, but that's okay.
I believe these particular organizations, and I have to go back and take a look at the previous year's budget process, but these were organizations that you typically have funded at these amounts, and you chose to do that last year as well versus in the previous year. And so in bringing this information to you is based off what you have routinely done with these particular organizations. So in terms of the recommendations from staff, it's kind of like the no meal conversation. When staff submitted the information, administration is not saying specifically you should approve or not approve a meal or no meal. We're saying to you that the information has to get to you on the list. We are the vehicle that puts it on the list, but ultimately you as the body make that decision. And this related to these HTAX allocations, it's very similar. We are the vehicle to get it there based off of what your previous actions have been for these particular hospitality tax agencies. So I'm not saying that's the best process. If you want these agencies to start, you putting those on there individually, then that's certainly not an issue for us. This is just a consistent grouping that you have approved time after time, and we provided you that same information again.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Ms.
Okay.
McBride?
Yeah, just wanted
Go ahead.
for some clarification. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
You recognize Mr. Brown?
I want to make a motion that we approve the amount set forth as staff recommended for Capital City Lake Murray Country.
Second.
That would be the 124,600, right? All right.
Yes.
You recognize Ms. Mackey?
Just for clarification, so is this technically a staff recommendation? I didn't think so, based off what I've heard. So I just want to clarify, it's not, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I don't think it's a staff, I think it's more of a council member recommendation to fund them.
That number is just a placeholder,
It's just a placeholder, it's
and
the
also
math.
as I mentioned that the column number 7, this is the motion where we definitely need a number determined by the council. You could see the other motions where we say like no, where we don't need a number determination there. But these kind of motions, we need a number determination from council.
Gotcha.
So it's definitely not.
Mr. Branham, if you don't mind, just restate your motion.
Sure. The motion is to approve the funding for Capital City Lake Murray Country in the amount of $124,600, which is the amount that staff factored into its recommended budget.
No, they did not.
Tell you what, so we can move this along. I will second that. Any discussion?
Yeah, I do have some discussion. Mr. Brandon,
You recognize Livingston.
so your motion is to fund Lake Maury less than the 1/5 that they received last time and reduce that to 124,600?
Well, since it was directed to me, I mean, the committee already awarded $25,400.
But we have to approve the committee's award too.
There was a motion, you already approved that motion for the committee recommendation. So they are going to get that 25,400. So you already approved
It's
that
already
motion.
approved?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
all
already
right.
approved.
Thank you, I'm fine.
Any additional discussion? All right, Madam Clerk?
Brenham,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron, Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right, next item on the motions budget list is item 25, source of funding, special revenue, department impact, and hospitality tax. This approved funding for the Columbia Metro Convention and Visitors Bureau. The amount requested was $275,000. Awarded was $33,000 by the committee, and $242,000 is the amount that is listed.
Mr. Chair.
The amount of the motion. You recognize Ms. Mackey?
Motion to approve Columbia Metro Convention and Visitors Bureau at $242,000.
Second.
Properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Teratio.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
Barron.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda, item 26. This is Special Revenue Fund, Department Impact and Hospitality Tax. This request is to approve funding for Columbia International Festival. Amount requested was $235,000. The committee awarded $17,200, and the amount listed for second reading is $217,800. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
You recognize Mr. Pugh.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve for $217,800 for the Columbia International Festival.
Second.
Second.
Properly second. Any none? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Teratio.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
Barron.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is item 27. That is sponsor. And the motion is Councilwoman Barron. The source is, the fund rather, Special Revenue, Department Impact and Hospitality Tax, Tier 3, approved funding for Southeast Rural Community Outreach, also known as CERCO. The request was for $90,000, and the committee awarded $11,333. And the amount listed for second reading is $78,667.
Mr. Chair,
You recognize Ms. Barron?
I'd like to make a motion to approve CERCO at $78,667.
Second.
Moved to properly second. Any discussion? There being none?
Yes.
I'm sorry,
What
Mr.
was the amount
Livingston?
they were approved for last year? Do you know? Do you have that?
I'm looking at it, if $67,985 per his email to me at 12 o'clock.
Additional discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham.
No.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston.
No.
Teratio.
No.
Oh.
Weaver.
No.
Barron.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is item 28. This is the Special Revenue Fund, Department Impacted Hospitality Tax, Tier 3. This is approved carryover, any unexpended funds from the Gateway Pocket Park / Blight Removal Project to fiscal year 2024 budget, and don't see an amount.
Mr. Chair,
You recognize Ms. Newton.
I move to approve items 28 and 29.
Second.
Properly second. Any discussion?
Yes.
You recognize Ms. Mackey.
Can I just get some clarification on carryover of any I didn't think there was any funds left. Is there a dollar amount?
There are some funds left over. I don't have the exact amount right now, but I can provide that to the council before third reading.
Thank you.
Additional discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Teratio.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
Barron.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the motions list is item 30. Sponsors of this motion are Councilwoman English and Councilman Livingston. The fund is Special Revenue, Department Impact and Hospitality Tax. Approved funding to the Lower Richland Sweet Potato Festival for the annual festival in fiscal year 2024. The committee awarded $15,800, and the amount listed for approval tonight is $44,200.
Mr. Chair,
You recognize Ms. English?
move to approve the Lower Richland Sweet Potato Festival annual festival for $44,200.
Second.
Moved to properly second. Any discussion? You recognize Ms. Newton?
Thank you. And I had this conversation with Ms. English earlier. I fully support the Sweet Potato Festival. It is a wonderful addition to our community that brings in lots of tourists. And seeing it here, it made me think that this is an opportunity, not stopping this budget, but in future, I would love for council to consider what is the bar that we use to determine festivals that end up in our budget at a significant funding level. Again, I'm thrilled to support the Lower Richland Sweet Potato Festival. I just hope that's a conversation we'll have moving forward. Thank you.
Ms. Newton. Additional discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham,
No.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston, Teratio,
Yes?
Yes.
Weaver, Barron,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the motions budget list is item 31. Sponsor of that motion is Councilwoman Newton. The source, well, the fund rather, special revenue, the department impacted hospitality tax, approved carryover of any unexpended hospitality funds from each council member district to fiscal year 2024 budget.
Move to approve.
It's been moved to properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes?
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the motion budget list is item 32. This is from the Special Revenue Fund, Department Impacted Hospitality Tax, adjust and approve H-tax use of fund balance as necessary. And it's noted that this will override motion number 14.
Mr. Chair,
You recognized Ms. Newton?
I move to approve items 32 through 35, so the rest of the items in this category.
Second.
Second.
All right, it's been
Mr.
moved to
Chair.
properly second. Any discussion? Mr. Sponde, you recognize?
We need a number for 32, which I have. Should I give it to you? Yep. So which is 1,365,255.
One more time.
Sponde?
1,365,255.
That's for
That
hospitality 32?
yes.
Okay. So you, Mr. Racio?
Thank you. And just for clarification, so item 14 was the approval of the H-tax use of fund balance in the amount of $1,098,713. So that is no longer the case.
That's right. So because all the council action based on the motions in between that change that balance now. So now it will be higher balance. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Sponde, you said you needed a number. Does the motion, do we need to change the motion, amend it, or
No,
it's
I think it's just the
fine as
number
is?
I needed to plug
Okay.
in the last column. Yes.
All right. Any additional discussion? All right, there being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston, Teratio,
Yes?
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the budget motions list is item 36. This is actually under Category 3, the general fund. And department impacted, countywide departments. This is approved projected operating general fund revenue as presented in the fiscal year 2024 recommended budget book. And the dollar amount is $202,132,831. Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second. Let's move to properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston, Teratio,
Yes?
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the budget motions list is item 37. Again, this is the general fund, department impacted, countywide departments, approved general fund transfers in from H-tax and A-tax funds as presented in the fiscal year 2024 recommended budget book. The dollar amount listed is $3,525,000. Entertain a motion.
So moved to approve, sorry.
Second.
So moved to properly second. Any discussion? You recognize Mr. Acio?
Mr. Chair, I would make a substitute motion to approve items 37 through 54. I don't know if my colleagues are ready to do that yet.
Second.
I can go to 45.
Okay.
What did you say, 30?
Okay. You said 37 through, you said 54?
54?
54. Seconded by Ms. Barron. All right. Any discussion? Ms. Newton?
Thank you.
And then Mr. Weaver.
Thank you. So looking at what number? What was the starting number?
37 through 54. We just approved 36, correct?
So looking at 37 to 54, we have the administration recommendations for salary and other compensations. And I just wanted to confirm some of the things that we're looking at here are also contractual obligations. So as we look at 51 through 53, which would be the Central Midlands COG, which is contractual, the City Center Partnership, and the RAID Act. I'm just confirming that those are recommendations, but they're also contractual obligations on the part of the county.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Councilman Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know this is my first budget, but that's quite a few quite a few things to approve in one fell swoop, although I am sensitive to the time issue as well. So I'm going to be voting no. I think we need to talk about some of these things as we go forward.
Well, actually, Councilman Weaver, you can talk about them. If there's a specific motion that you want to discuss, yeah, go ahead and just.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
If you have
if
questions.
we're going to vote 38 through 54 all in one fell swoop, I thought that's what we were doing.
Right, but we're in discussion phase now, so if you have questions about, say, I don't know, it could be motion 50.
Oh, okay.
If we want to have
Okay.
a conversation about it, we can have a conversation about it.
Okay. All right. So number 43, if we're in that phase, approved 4% pay raise, I get that. Approved funding implementation of wage adjustment plan, number 44. I thought that was still in the discussion phase between council and administration. Are we approving the 5.5 million, or is that in theory?
Mr. Brown.
So what you would be doing is approving the funding, and later on, when you determine if you approve the plan itself and how it's allocated, that's where that would come from. Right now, you're putting aside funding to allow you to do those things. And
We're voting on 5.5 million, but we don't know the breakdown of that right now.
so you don't know the breakdown as to, which particular organizations within their internal structure and the details of the pay, because the departments themselves would be going through that.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That just gives me trepidation there that we don't know exactly how that 5.5 is going to turn out. Okay. All right. And then the other question I had was the 7 million on ARPA funds, number 39. Do we have that much available left in ARPA funds? I thought we just said we couldn't spend that ARPA money, or we can spend it.
So you have funding that you've already allocated various things for.
Okay.
And so what you have here is you're basically saying, we know we're going to use these amount of funds in the budget year to balance our budget overall and take care of our operational needs. So those dollars assume that they are already being allocated and used for those general funding purposes.
So it's kind of like a blanket authorization for the 7 million.
For the funding of it, yes, sir.
Okay.
Again, anything that generally is funded, either council approves in terms of detail, whether through contracts or other committee processes. So the general blanket funding is what you're approving, and everything else always flows through council about the details of what the funding is used for.
Okay, I understand. And if we approve the 7 million, what is left in ARPA funds, give or take? Do we know after the 7 million?
He pointed to me. I don't mind. No, go right ahead, Mr. Desponding.
I'm sorry.
No, I think that that is the number, I think, which A.C. Thomas or Mr. Brown just gave around like 380,000, I guess. That's the leftover amount then.
Right. So there was the general dollars of the ARPA funds have been generally allocated and said we're going to use these funds for these purposes.
Okay, so this 7 million is kind of a one-off in this budget year. Or next budget year.
It's funding that's already been accounted for. You're just going into a new fiscal year, and you're putting money, because you have to balance your budget in your coffers to say, we know we're going to use this pot of funds within this fiscal year.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Yes, sir.
Additional questions or discussion? Okay. Madam Clerk?
Brenham,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston, Teratio,
Yes.
Weaver,
No.
Barron,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the motions budget list is item 55. Sponsor of this motion is Councilwoman McBride, Councilman Pugh, and Councilman Weaver. Again, we're still in the general fund. And the department impact, it would be the community impact grants. This item looks like it has 3 requests. Firstly, 60% of the total funding for community impact grants be allocated for countywide community grants using during current grant application process. Secondly, the remaining 40% of the funding be allocated and divided equally among all 11 districts using a process similar to district hospitality tax allocation. Thirdly, administration will review grant process to ensure guidelines are in compliance with all fiscal and legal requirements and make recommendations as appropriate. Entertain a motion.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? You recognize Ms. McBride?
Mr. Chair, I made this motion and with my colleagues based on equitable funding and to ensure that our district's unique community needs are addressed. And with the current process, we do impact the community, but we do not always impact the unique needs of the community because oftentimes funds will not be able to get to those districts. And therefore, for more equity in the distribution of funds and inclusiveness, this motion is being made.
Mr. Weaver, and then Ms. Mackey.
Very briefly, Mr. Chairman, when my esteemed colleague, Ms. McBride, asked me to support this motion, I can only say I think we would all agree that we know our districts the best. And so when she asked me to support this, I was 100% in favor of the motion. That's all.
All right, Ms. Mackey, and then
Thank you. This motion is related to the community impact grants process, and we do have a committee for that, similar to the one we just talked about with ARPA having a committee. And the committee has been meeting. The committee has talked about a process and application and has addressed the issues as we relate as equity, as we talked about, and making sure that we really are focusing on finding the areas that will impact our community best. And so knowing that the committee has been working on this, we actually met today before this budget meeting, and we've been informing council as a whole about our process. We have approved application as well as guidelines that are coming to full council at our next council meeting. And so to have this motion here without actually going through the committee, which we all as a body agreed upon, it seems to me out of place. Why wouldn't we talk about this in the committee? It seems as if this body wants to disregard the committee and all the work that we have put forth without even coming to a meeting or hearing our suggestions or reviewing the applications and providing suggestions to the applications in that correct process. So I will be voting no, because I do believe as a structure and how we operate as a body, we set committees for a reason. And when we made this committee, it was to develop the process. And so I think we should all continue that process that we set, or how we're going to operate, and continue to allow things to go through the committee as our colleagues do the work.
Mr. Livingston, and then Ms. Barron, and then Ms. McBride.
Well, I'm kind of following up on what Ms. Mack was saying, because I put them on the community impact committee, and all these individuals to go through and not participate in the normal process is going to delete the amount of funds. With what's important is within that group funding for community impact grants is a lot of the significant agencies we funded last 10 years or so, well, like Senior Resource, or different ones, I forget the major ones, that we may or may not be able to fund, or we may not have a fair chance to submit an application and for the grants if we approve individuals now. I do support these, but I think they ought to go through the normal process that the committee is putting in place to receive the funds. And also with these funds, I'd much rather get a bigger bang for my buck as opposed to just simply spreading the funds out to districts, because I think it'd have a minimum effect compared to what it would have from an aggregate perspective. It doesn't mean it won't touch everybody's communities and districts and so forth. I just don't think you get as much benefit from the funds. So I'd rather move forward with the committee plans and recommendations.
Thank you, Ms. Livingston. Ms. Barron, and then Ms. McBride. And then Ms. Newton after Ms. McBride.
Mr. Chair, I too sit on this committee, and Ms. McBride and I have had this conversation many times, and I do support council members having the opportunity to have some say in the awards that go out into their districts. However, just being a committee member, spending time with the document and with the other committee members, I would like to see that this motion, just like I stated earlier with ARPA funds, this motion come to the committee and let's flesh it out and let's have a conversation. It's a new committee. We're still establishing things and guidelines, and I think that this is a great conversation to have in the committee, and then hopefully we can come up with a standard practice instead of it being a part of our budget process. I think that we need to take it to the committee and really have some detailed conversation about it. Thank you.
Ms. McBride, and then Ms. Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do appreciate the work of the committee. And I was by no means trying to circumvent the committee process. In fact, I shared this motion with the committee chair and members. So let me make that clear. The reason that I made the motion is that currently, even from the past programs that we funded, there were programs that were not meeting the unique needs of my district as well as other districts. And that discretionary funding, as we have in the community impact, is really based on those who can write the best grants. Consequently, oftentimes, some of our community programs are not able to get the funding. The real issue is that the money should be equitably divided among all districts, I think. And I don't think that one or two big programs should receive all of the funding. And what we do, we have special programs we call Friends of Richland County or Partners, but they will consume all of the funding. And our little programs in the community that have specific needs don't get the funding. Now, our hospitality funds are good, but they don't address the unique needs of the community. We do not have, at one time we were able to help with other funding, but there are certain guidelines that we couldn't use that funding. So there is no way that we are able to help our districts. And that's what I wanted to make sure, that there was fairness. There was 60% statewide, and that each district would be able to get an equitable amount of funds to help serve their constituents. I have no problems if you, well, I do have problems with it, but I just wanted to make sure that you understand the reason, and this was by no means circumventing the process.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Ms. Newton, and then Ms. Mackey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so I just wanted to acknowledge, I think Ms. McBride just expressed a challenge that I often feel where you have all this discretion with H-tax funds, but sometimes the needs that you feel or I feel in my community are different needs that I can't always address. And so I live that life every day. For me right now, I'm going to support continuing to follow the committee process. I think that I appreciate the approach that we're taking in terms of the applications and in terms of the transparency. And I guess from my perspective, the way that I understand our committee process, and maybe I'm wrong, is if we feel like this isn't hitting the needs of the community that we want, that we have an opportunity later to change how the committee does things through council motion. So I would like to see this go through. And so for me, as it relates to this motion and other motions that feel like some of the lump sum appropriations of the past, I'd like to just see all of those things go through the committee process, and let's encourage our people to apply. Let's see how it goes, and if we need to change it after that, change it. So again, I certainly understand very much that problem, and I hope that through the current process we have with the community impact grants, that we can still address those, even in the little nooks and crannies of my district. Thank you.
Newton and Ms. Mackey.
I did just want to clarify a few statements that were made. Ms. McBride did share her motion with me as chair of the committee. I can't speak to everybody else, but she did share it. I will state that our process for sending motions to a committee is to ask the chair to put your motion on the agenda. He assigns it to a committee. So that is our process. She did share her motion. I looked at the motion, and I did bring it up during our committee meetings. And just today, when we voted, pieces of this motion are in our guidelines and our application. This Community Impact Grant Committee is a new committee. This is a new application process. When folks are filling out the application, there are boxes that says, what area does your program impact? Is it countywide, or is it District 1 through 11? And you check a box so we can all see transparently what's being impacted. In addition to that, we took the up to $1 million that was allocated to the Community Impact Grant and we split it. And 60% goes to the 9 organizations that this body voted on that we deemed community partners. The remaining 40% is open for any and everyone to apply for. So to say that the larger organizations eat up all the money and there's nothing left for the small organizations, that's not true. There's 40% available. They have up to $50,000 that they can apply for, and it is open. And when we get the results back, committee members can vote, but every member of council is going to see before a final decision is made. And we're going to see the list of what districts are impacted, and we can look at it and see and make an equitable decision at that time based on information, having the same information from all organizations. And so it is a process that I believe the committee has been thoughtful about and plans to bring that to our next council meeting, because we also know that these organizations need the money. And so we want to get it out in time. We also sent a schedule to full body already that has been reviewed and approved, and the committee is working to follow that schedule. And so our goal is to get it out by July 1st, but we're still happy to hear any other changes or suggestions from the body. But parts of this have been impacted, and small and large organizations are going to be able to receive community impact dollars from Richland County if they apply and show transparency and accountability for their work.
Thank you. Ms. Mackey, Ms. McBride?
Yeah. I do appreciate the committee taking some of the recommendations that I had made regarding the equitable distribution of funds and improving the grant process. So I acknowledge that work has been done and some improvement has been made. Again, I know the grant process. I know the way discretionary grants work. And while it sounds good, the unintended consequences often leave smaller community-based programs without funding. Thank you.
Mr. Brown, I have a question for you, if I may. Your concerns as it pertains to, I guess, grant writing, have you brought that to the attention of the committee? And has that been addressed, or has there been an attempt to address your concerns as it pertains to there being more equity when it comes to, I guess, the process, or when it, as far as submitting grants?
Yes, sir. Not only have I brought it to the committee, but I have raised the question here on council numerous times, particularly regarding the ARPA funding, as well as the community impact. So this is not the first time you've heard me mention it, and it probably won't be the last time. I will continue to hope that I understand group dynamics, and I know that there are group dynamics in committees, so I understand the positions taken, but I do appreciate the fact that there are those that are willing to look and listen and to take into consideration the motion that I've made. And I still ask for your support, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Member. Any additional questions or discussion on this item? All right, there being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Branham.
No.
Pugh.
What's the motion, Mr. Chair?
Motion is, Ms. McBride made the motion to approve.
55.
Yeah, because it's 55, it's item 55. So, motion 55. I don't want to read all of that.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston. Teratio.
No.
Weaver.
Yes.
Barron.
No.
Walker.
No.
Mackey.
No.
English.
No.
Newton.
No.
Motion fails.
The next item on the budget motions list is item 56. This sponsor of this motion is Councilwoman McBride and Councilman Pugh. Again, from the general fund, Department Impacted Community Impact Grants. This is a request to approve funding for St. John Foundation Career Development and Violence Prevention Program for fiscal year 2024. And there's a note that approval of this motion will increase use of fund balance, and the amount requested is $75,000. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
You recognize Ms. McBride.
I move for approval of item 56 and 57, if it's okay with you.
The motion is for approval of item 56 and 57.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Okay, any discussion?
Yes.
You recognize Ms. McBride.
Mr. Chair, item 56, the St. John Foundation Career Development and Violence Prevention Program, and item 57, the Wiley Foundation and Community Empowerment and Youth Fellowship Program, is a continuation program that we have funded for the past 2 years, going into the third year of funding. Normally, this would have been, we were thinking that this, I was thinking that this was a part of the continuation program, and it did not show up on the budget, similar to the programs that we just funded. And these programs are some of the unique programs that are actually in our communities. Most of these programs are not directly in the community. And the sheriff's office, the city police department, the location of these two programs are in the highest crime areas of violence in Richland County. And the reason why it is so important that these programs are in a position, are in a place where the citizens trust these entities that are sponsoring the program. I'll say this because this is not one I'm going to beg for council approval on or plea. I'm just asking you to vote your conscience. These programs are where these young people live, is the same community that the city of Columbia, that the housing was so bad that the fire department closed down the housing and they had to move for several months. these are the programs where each year gun violence take the lives of one or two of the young people each year. And the final thing I would say is that these are the programs where you don't have other programs going in providing those services because people are actually scared to go into the communities to provide the services. I have been in those communities. I have talked to the citizens there. And even 2 years ago, many of you may not have been here, there was a big newspaper story regarding how they live. And one of the areas I visited, I happened to go in the house, and there was a vacant apartment upstairs where the people lived in the house. Their commode wasn't working. They would have to go upstairs to get to the commode. And in the program, and the report, I wish I had the report here, talking to these young people, they are scared. When we go to bed at night, we go and we lock our doors and get in our comfortable beds. These children go to bed, they have to put the sofa sometimes against the door from people breaking in. They have to sleep on the floor because of the gunshots that they hear all night. And I'm not asking for us to continuously fund these programs like we may do with some of the manufacturers with incentives. I'm just asking that you provide this program and these young people the opportunity for help. Finally, they have worked very hard in trying to get additional funding. Due to COVID, it hasn't been easy. But I believe that we shouldn't continually fund programs, but I do believe that we should give them the opportunity so that they can become self-sustaining. And that is what I'm asking for in this report, for funding of these two grants. And they were previously funded by county. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Oh, one more thing.
Yes, ma'am. You recognize Ms. McBride.
In the, they said the approval of this motion will increase the use of fund balance. Of course, this was part of the general budget anyway, and this might increase the fund balance, but we're in pretty good conditions because we follow the standard accountability, and this would not take us out of that range to fund these programs. So we would have good fund balance according to good fiscal accountability.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. I saw Ms. Newton and then Ms. Mackey.
Technically, I think Ms. Mackey threw her hand up first.
Okay, I just happened to look.
Happy to wait.
All right, so, Ms. Mackey and then Ms. Newton.
Mr. Chair, may I request that a member of staff speak to what our current fund balance is based on current motions? I'm aware that we still have plenty of motions to go through that could impact fund balance now, but can someone address where we are with?
Mr. Deshpande?
So the recommended use of fund balance is 5.4 million. That puts our fund balance at 22.7% of the previous year expenditure. The policy is from 20 to 35%. However, now we are at the 22.5. That's where we would like to be at in order to protect our financial rating by the credit agencies. So we have a very teeny cushion there. Any action that you might take, that we might go around 22.4 based on some of the motions that are listed in the entire motion list. So to answer your questions, we are at 22.7%.
Mackey?
Thank you. That answered my question for right now. Thank you.
Newton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as I stated previously, for some of these motions that can apply for the community impact grants that feel like some of the old lump sum requests, I'm going to be voting no. As it relates to this program, though, I know that we've been advised we can't commit ARPA dollars from here, but I guess I'd like to go on record to say that This is a hugely important issue that Ms. McBride has raised. It's why one of my requests for council that council was kind enough to grant was for the ARPA dollars that we reserve for youth and recreation services. That's at $1 million. And so while I can't speak for the committee up here, as the committee hasn't addressed that, I guess I would say that even though I'm going to vote no for this motion, I feel pretty comfortable, Ms. McBride, that there are sources of funding that are here that we can use working together to support this goal and this program, because it is hugely important and it's vitally important. So I just want to say that.
Livingston?
I just want to say I certainly agree about the importance of these programs, and it's my intent to support them in the normal process of the Community Impact Grants program. Because it's not supported right now doesn't mean it will not be supported. It just simply be supported during the normal process.
Right.
Mr. Chair, these programs currently exist. So this would be a continuation of the program. And we funded, there are other programs that are funded, I think you call them non-community programs or whatever, that have funding approval. I think that it's important to continue the funding of these programs like we just did the other programs. And also, Mr. I was going to make sure that I pronounce your name correctly, that we would be within the general fund category or reserve funds. This would not take us out of that category, the funding of these programs.
Yep. So we as I said, that funding this programs might take us like less than 22.5% of our fund balance, and that is definitely, although it's more than 20%, but as when we try to get our protect our credit rating, that might affect, because this year also we are going to have another bond coming up at the in this fiscal year, so we will be needing the credit rating. So definitely the 22.5 is a very thin cover there.
So, but the point I'm making is that I don't think that based on fiscal accountability, that $150,000 would take us out of the fund balance range where it is acceptable and accountable.
Yeah, but the lowest range is 20%, so which will not take to
Okay,
that level.
that was my question. Thank you.
I think you're saying, Mr. Deshpande, that this is getting awfully close.
Yes, sir.
We're flirting with potentially our credit rating.
Yeah.
here.
So we are right now as 22.7, and this couple motion might take us to 22.5, and that's again, as my point, only point is like we're going to be very close to that range. Yeah.
It's only if we're coming from the general fund.
That's right. They're going to come from the general fund.
Before Ms. McBride, I tell you what, we'll let you go ahead and get in again, and then Mr. Pugh, and then Ms. Barron.
I would not have recommended it if I thought that it would have taken us out of the fund balance and would have affected our credit side, to make sure that I check with you on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Okay, Mr. Pugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One, I just want to say, when Ms. McBride reached out to me, I do think this program is very important, and it's important for us to help continue the process. But I do respect the committee. I had an opportunity to sit in and listen to the committee today and understand exactly where we are and what we have going on. And I want to echo the same sentiments as my colleague, Ms. Newton, at the end. I know we can't allocate anything from Harper funds right now, but this is something that I would strongly like to support if it doesn't pass this evening in the future.
Ms. Barron.
Thank you. So I'm taking another look at specifically the motions that I put forth that we will discuss in just a moment, and it does bring a different light to me when I look at the spreadsheet as represented that the staff has put forth, and that when they talk about the departments impacted, I guess I didn't put two and two together as it relates to when I see community impact grants as the department that this is being impacted by. So to me, what that says is that the community impact grants, they, for instance, communities and schools, I made that motion. In essence, what that says to me is that communities and schools should probably apply for the community impact grants. That's how I'm taking this. Is that how you're presenting it?
Not really. The thing is, like, the community impact grants will be also part of the general fund. So the community impact grant, that 1 mil is coming from the general fund. So the overall, the bigger fund is general fund, and then all the grant making, we thought it will be part of the community impact grant. That's why we put that community impact grant as an department impacted. There was nothing other than just because both of the sources of the both programs will be from the general fund. That's why.
So my follow-up question would be, if we fund, for instance, communities and schools, does that mean that the 1 mil that we set aside, those funds would decrease because we would be funding communities and schools or any of the other ones that I've made motions for?
Not really, because this is going to impact our general fund balance, use of fund balance. The community impact grant committee funding is already set and approved, just approved with the motion is 1.1 mil. So this will not impact to the committee's funding, but it will impact the use of fund balance. Both sources is general fund, basically.
Okay, so just as a note to self, note to staff, some of these categories, while I find helpful, are also confusing. They're confusing me because when I see community impact, like I'm thinking I'm stepping on my own toes because I sit on that committee. So the reason why I spoke up is because I was getting ready to be in a position to say, you know what, I have to be consistent with what I've already stated, and being consistent in what I already stated was, then these groups need to go to the committee, and if they need to go to the committee, I'm fine with that because that's what I voted on today. Okay. But when I look at, when you say departments impacted, I'm like, wait a minute. So I was really confused when I started speaking, just based on how it's laid out.
Mr. Chair.
Recognize.
Ms. Barron and to the council members, I certainly understand where you're saying. The information here is simply saying that there was a process that you already had, and the best way to describe this is that this motion potentially impacts the agency in a way that the agency is the committee. So the committee itself is established, and now you have motions that would seem to fall under the purview of that committee, but they're here before us in a different process. So the best way to communicate that is to try to make you aware that you have a process that you've already started, and now this is showing up in another area. And so how do you reconcile that? And then that's for you all to decide, as you have been discussing here. But I understand what you're saying, and we may try to figure out in the future how to best address something like that to be more clear.
Thank you.
Discussion? Recognize Ms. Mackey.
Thank you. Just from the Community Impact Grant Committee and talking, and we've been working on this now probably for about over a year of just really trying to create a process that every nonprofit knows what it is and follows the same process, and everyone follows an application, and we're not necessarily showing favoritism because someone didn't have to do the application, but then somebody else did and they got less money and had to do an application. So it's really trying to create transparency, but then also create a process that every nonprofit knows, okay, there's a Community Impact Grant Committee, application period opens this time, we'll apply. similar to accommodation tax. Like, it's the committee and I think the body, we wanted to really kind of streamline this process so that all the nonprofits can go through the same process, so that we're not necessarily having to explain to different organizations, well, why this one and not that one? How did we come to be? Why didn't they have to fill out an application and I did? And so I think, all these organizations, we all have, supported in some way or another, volunteered, and believe in what they do. I just think we as a body agreed to create a process, and I'm hoping that we can follow the process and follow through what we said.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey. Additional discussion? Yes, Ms. McBride. Yes, ma'am.
With the funding for the ARPA funds, for community impact grant funding, I think that it was funded in the community impact funding. I think that the last funding, we tried to get it through, and we sort of rushed it through in January, that we were funded, those programs that were funded in January, or this year.
No, that was still general fund. That was the community
Impact grant,
yes.
right. Well, I would like to know, they probably, I don't know whether they did or not, expend all those funds. Do you know whether those funds have been expended, or whether there will be some funds carried forth from that funding?
But, the year is not ended yet, so they still have time to spend by June 30th. So we will, I don't have that number in front of me, but we can find out what would be. But, they can spend last week of June also. So
It's possible that there may be some carryover funds there.
unless we do, that will be at the end of the fiscal year book close, so that will come, we'll know that only in August, end of August, basically.
One more follow-up question. There are 9 programs, I think, that it's my understanding that we approved for, they're called community partners. And these 9 community partners don't have to go through a competitive process or anything. Can someone with grants answer that question? Okay.
Ms. Mackey?
Thank you. So the committee met today and is bringing to council next week those 9 organizations which were presented to the body and the full body voted on and agreed. Those 9 organizations do still have to complete an application just like everyone else. They complete an application and then we will review it and then determine what their funding amount will be. And then that still comes before the full body.
So are they competing for the funds, or are they completing an application?
So they are completing an application, and you could say they're competing for funds in the sense that we set aside up to $1 million of funding. 60% of that is allocated for these community partners. If these 9 community partners submit applications that are above the 60% we've set aside, then we will, as a body, have to decide what organization gets what. So it's not a guarantee that whatever they ask for, they get. Is that answering?
Okay, no, but they will be
No, it didn't
getting,
answer your question.
no, because they will be, it's my understanding that it's not a competitive process. It may be that the committee and finally council determine how much money they get, but they're not having to compete to get any money. They're going to get some funding if the money is available.
Yes, that I want to say that part. Yes, they're not
Okay.
getting whatever they ask for, but yes, they will
Yeah.
get some funding. Yes.
So that is, that they have 9 entities that will automatically get money. And I guess my concern is that we're doing a slippery slope. And I want to, before we vote on this, we've already voted, but we still got to do the budget, that are we going to be legally bound to provide funding for these 9 organizations if we put it a part of our ordinance or our motions that we give these? Because each year, if we don't have funding, will we be liable to find some funding for them? And that is part of my concern with those 9. And we're in programs like these community-based programs that I'm talking about that are unique, and that are in the community will not have the opportunity to get that non-competitive funding. Anyway, I ask you for support for the motions that are before you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Brown, you had your hand, you were reaching toward your microphone, so, okay.
No, sir.
Well, I misread your body language. All right. Ms. McBride, was your motion seconded? Yes. I believe it was. Any discussion? Any additional discussion? All right, there being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham,
No?
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
No.
Teratio,
No.
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
No.
Walker,
No.
Mackey,
No.
English,
No.
Newton.
No?
Motion fails.
All right, next item on the budget motions list is item 58. Sponsor the motion is Councilwoman Barron. The fund is the general fund, department impacted, community impact grants. This is a request to approve funding for communities in schools of South Carolina. Approval of this motion will increase use of fund balance. The amount is $81,000. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
You recognize, Ms. Barron.
before I make a motion, may I make a statement?
Yes, you may.
And so, as I've stated already, this conversation has been quite enlightening, and just, that's why I think it's helpful that we have, I guess, work sessions like these. And so, given the work that the committee's done, and that's why I voted against, the previous motion, and I do a lot, I support those organizations totally, along with Communities in Schools and the Midlands Area Food Bank. However, because of the process that we already have in place and the process that we are really working to bring some consistency to our budget process, I'm going to withdraw my motions for 58 and 59 and with the hopes that they will have an opportunity to apply for the community impact grants.
So noted. Thank you, Ms. Barron. Mr. Wright, anything needs to happen? Ms. Barron, she's withdrawn her motion, so that doesn't require a motion, right?
Correct.
All right. Next item on the budget motions list is item 60. Sponsor of this motion is Councilman Weaver. The fund is the general fund, and the department impacted is the Public Information Office. And this is a request to eliminate the printing of annual calendars from the PIO office by reducing the need to print wall calendars. The estimated cost of printing of calendars is $11,500. All right, entertain a motion. You recognize Mr. Weaver?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to just explain to members of council real quick. So I believe this is the only...
Let me stop you if you...
Okay.
Oh, sorry, my apologies, Councilman Weaver. Mr. Wright.
Yes, Mr. Chair. With this particular motion, I believe it is actually an improper motion because it steps into the area of administration. This is an administrative office, and it actually is dealing with calendars, but basically the operations of the office. This is an internal office matter that they decide to print the calendars. So this body deals with policy and with doing the budget, but with this, or allocating the budget. So with this, is actually stepping into controlling what an office does in their internal operations. So I think it steps over that bound between administration and council. So I think it's an improper motion.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Mr. Weaver?
Well, I was going to say, Mr. Chairman, and I'll still say it, that this was the only thing tonight that would add back to the fund balance, making Ms. Thomas and Mr. Despande feel better tonight. This was going to put $11,500 back in the coffers, and I actually have props. For my motion tonight. I brought you these fine calendars that I get from all these organizations that send them to me. America the Beautiful, Guide Dog Puppies. I mean, I get 50 of these calendars a year. I can't give them away in my real estate office. I put them in the lobby. The point is, I think wall calendars, they're nice, and the staff does a good job. I just think its time has come and gone. It's a product of the 70s. I don't know anybody that keeps a wall calendar up. Everybody keeps it on their phone. It's just a way for us to go back to our district to taxpayers to say, hey, we're cutting the waste. We saved y'all $11,500 this year. That was the point of my motion.
Best of intentions, right?
Yes, sir,
Councilman
Mr.
Weaver?
Chairman.
Absolutely. Well, in light of Mr. Wright's legal advice, are you withdrawing the motion as well, Councilman Weaver?
What's that, Mr. Chairman?
In light of the advice from the county attorney, are you withdrawing the motion?
To speed it up and given the time, I will drop it tonight, but I will be back with something in the future. Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
On notice,
All right, motion withdrawn. Thank you, Councilman Weaver.
Yes, sir.
All right. Next item on the budget motions list is item 61. Sponsors of this motion are Councilman Branham and Weaver. It's the general fund, department impacted, Sheriff's Department. This is a request to approve funding to allow Sheriff's Department to increase the minimum starting salary of a sheriff's deputy to $50,000. And secondly, to ensure that any deputy with at least 1 year of experience with the department makes at least $52,500. And thirdly, all employees of the Richland County Sheriff's Department receives a 5% pay increase in fiscal year 2024. Notes provided. The total expenditures of this motion comes out to $7,539,072.38. The available current funding is $2,261,721.72. The additional new funding needed will be $5,277,350.67. As per the current revenue estimates and the use of fund balance, we do not have enough resources to fund this motion. And this includes council-approved unfrozen positions and bringing them to the $50,000 mark. And so the dollar amount rather for this request is $5,277,351.
Mr. Chair.
You recognize Mr. Branham?
I just want to start off by saying I'm super disappointed that Mr. Weaver withdrew item number 60 because it was going to be a 1-2 punch. Number 60 was going to pay for 61.
that's some great math there, man.
Yep, that's what lawyers are known for, being good at math. No, I'd like to amend my motion, and the proposed amendment would be, and this is after speaking with the budget staff, it was super helpful. Obviously, I drafted the motion. I didn't have the information on the financial impact at the time. They helped me understand what it was, as well as the constraints and the guideposts when it comes to the state of the budget in light of the prepared recommended budget. So before this meeting, as has been indicated, I believe the staff wanted to not exceed a potential additional financial allocation of $464,000 to make sure that we stayed within the fund balance threshold that the policy established. So the amendment to my motion is to say that I move to approve $464,000 to get the positions at the Sheriff's Department, which are the deputy, master deputy, corporal, and sergeant, towards that direction of having a minimum starting salary of $50,000. And I'll wait for a second, but I'd ask to be recognized for further discussion.
I'll second the motion.
It's been seconded for to get to discussion.
Second.
It's been seconded by Councilman Weaver. Any discussion? All right, you recognize Councilman Branham.
Thank you. First, I'd like to acknowledge the great strides that this council has made over the last 12 months or so when it comes to funding the deputies and increasing the salaries at the Sheriff's Department. I haven't been here for all of it, but I have caught up, I believe, on the actions which have been taken to help promote better compensation for the sheriff's deputies. Certainly, for me, law enforcement is a fundamental role of local government. If the local government doesn't provide it, I'm pretty sure nobody else is going to. The state, not the federal. As we all know, we received a letter from the sheriff earlier in May, which indicated continuing difficulties at hiring, but also retaining sheriff's deputies, particularly in light of competition with other local governments. And so we've got, for example, two different local jurisdictions that are starting their deputies out at $50,000 and $52,000 respectively. I know that checking in with the sheriff today, he indicated that he's got 15 vacancies. Each one of those makes us a little bit less safe. Having said all that, I'm not in favor of a tax increase, nor am I in favor of passing that fund balance threshold. What I feel like I'm hearing from tonight is that there's definitely going to be some flux in the budget numbers that are available between now and the third reading. So, I reserve my own position between now and the third reading based on how the numbers in the budget develops from here. So just want to put all that out there, and I'll leave it there.
Additional discussion or questions? Councilman Weaver?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to say what Councilman Branham echoed what he said, but also think about the sheriff has repeatedly said, we waste a lot of money on training these deputies, and then they get hired away by another municipality or another county for higher pay. So we're wasting money on two ends. We pay for their training, and then they go somewhere else. So I think, we might save money in the long run on training towards some of this cost. So with $17 million of new money this year, I think we can find $462,000. Thank you.
Ms. Barron?
So I need clarity with the amendment that Mr. Brenham made. It says here that the original one, we didn't have enough resources. Do we have enough resources with the amended motion?
Mr. Chair?
Thomas after Ms. Barron, then Ms. Newton. But go ahead, Ms. Thomas.
Councilman Branham and I did have a conversation this afternoon, and he also had a conversation with Director Deshpande, that below the cushion between the 22.5% is about $464,000. That doesn't change the amount of the cost of changing the salaries of these deputies. It's not that we don't support it, and we do have plans for a 4% COLA, as well as a compensation study that is being completed, and hopefully a plan to implement that in the first quarter of 2024, not the fiscal year, but actual 2024. I'm not certain that I can tell you what $464,000 would accomplish in a department with 513 full-time staff deputies, 464 who fall into those categories. We could try to see what that would do, but I'm not certain. And to further add to that, I will say that the compensation plan would be reviewed with every department. It's not a decision that administration would make or that council would make without coming to you. We wouldn't come to you without having the conversations of knowing what it will and will not be able to do. There was a reason we also didn't implement it until the first half of 24, and that is because the cost of the compensation study is quite large. It's actually, in totality, about $12 million. So adding another 464, while is gracious and we could earmark that toward one place, I'm not certain of what that would accomplish. We wouldn't be able to tell you that at this point in time.
Thank you, Thomas. Newton? I'm sorry. Ms. Barron and then Ms. Newton.
Maybe I'm getting tired, but I don't know that I got my answer. So what you're saying is you don't know.
No, ma'am, I don't believe I do know. But given the number of positions and the change in salary, I'm not certain that even for half a year, $464,000 would accomplish that goal.
Newton?
Thank you. Are you asking to clarify on?
Yeah, I was looking for follow-up there. Is that okay?
I yield to the.
That's fine. Go ahead. Mr. Branham and then Ms. Newton.
The statement, I think, was, I'm not sure if $464,000 will accomplish that. what what is that?
The $50,000 for the deputies as starting salaries.
Right, okay. Well, I'll just say as well, you know, the amount was meant to help the county maintain financial responsibility. It definitely is not known to me that that amount will get every one of those officers to $50,000 starting salary, but it'll get them about $464,000 closer to being able to do that.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Newton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Ms. Thomas, you addressed part of what I wanted to go, but first, I wanted to make sure I heard something that you said correctly. I think you said that the cost of the compensation study was around $17 million. What I think you may have meant was the cost of implementing the increased compensation from the compensation study. But let me let you say.
That is correct, but it was $12 million.
12 million, sorry. Yeah, that's why I wanted you to correct that. So I guess my question to you would be this, is that, prior to seeing this motion, I was operating under the understanding, and you can tell me if it was correct or not, that as it relates to salaries, not just for the Sheriff's Department, but for our EMS, for all those staff that we depend on when we need them, that this compensation study would say, okay, let's take a look at our surrounding areas, let's take a look at roles, et cetera, and let's create a long-term sustainable compensation plan that doesn't just say, this is where you start today, but also establishing these are the levels, this is what your compensation looks like as you advance, and having the county put in a funding mechanism for now and moving forward so that those people could continue to grow. And that was a lot of words, so let me stop there first. Is that what we're doing?
Yes, ma'am. The plan here is to actually have a compensation system that will be sustainable long-term for employees, rather than injections that might come as funds are available.
Okay, and then my second question is, it's also my understanding that as it relates to starting the funding for the compensation study, for the implementation of the increased compensation, that once we have approved the budget tonight, we will have set aside funding that could start implementing those compensation increases at the start of the next calendar year.
Yes, ma'am. That would be the plan.
Okay, so then by following the course that we're on, we would be, and I feel like I heard January. I mean, the start of the year could be any month, but we're talking about January 2024, that we would start implementing those salary increases so that our sheriff's deputies and others would be receiving competitive pay.
Yes, ma'am.
And then I guess my final question, just to help guide me, because I mean, I don't know a single person here that doesn't support our sheriff's deputies and want them to be compensated well, is if for some reason this plan that we have laid out to get the right data and implement, if for some reason that didn't work, at any point council could come back and, according to the will of the body, give different directions to find funding to change compensation if needed.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hey there, Ms. Thomas. This is to the maker of the motion. Mr. Branham, I'm assuming that the aim of your motion is to, I guess, address concerns regarding recruitment and retention at the Sheriff's Department?
Yes.
Now, okay, well, let me just ask if you are aware that recently, in fact, this month, apparently the Post-Courier, there was an interview given with the Post-Courier where the sheriff allegedly stated that the Sheriff's Department is fully staffed. Were you made aware of that?
Yeah, I am aware of that, and I think that's a good illustration, the fact that earlier this month, they indicated they were fully staffed, and then already today, they have 15 vacancies. So that goes to show the amount of volatility, turnover, and the struggle with retention that that department is experiencing.
And again, you believe that the panacea for that is going to be I guess, increasing the pay, to 50,000?
I believe it'll help. I mean, we're talking about, if I'm looking at it as a potential employer, I know compensation is a major factor for prospective employees. And again, I'm looking at local jurisdictions that are at 52 and 50, local jurisdictions, not state, who I believe that we're in competition with for candidates.
So, Ms. Thomas, I think the current pay right now for a deputy, I think Deputy 1 position is at 47,000?
45.
45,000. And so with a 4% COLA.
46.8.
That gets you up to
46,880.
46,880, so close to 47,000. And then the comp study, that hasn't come in yet either, right? So once the comp study comes in, we could potentially be looking at our deputies either being right at or exceeding 50,000, possibly, right?
It's possible.
It's possible, but we don't know that
Yes.
Just yet. And as far as the 464,000, those funds are going to come from where?
That would come from the general fund balance.
From fund balance.
Yes, sir.
And do you know right offhand what impact that would have on the fund balance?
We would be right at 22.5%.
Right at, so we'll be teetering right there on the edge, and that's, I'm assuming that is sort of the sort of the red line, if you will. Or is that not the red
Yes,
line
no,
for purposes of our credit rating?
We believe that is for our credit rating. Granted, it does not hit the threshold for our policy, which is 20 to 35%. However, Richland County is one of only 26 counties in the country that has a AAA credit rating. That's something that's invaluable when you go to pricing your bonds and when you're seeking to get support, even if it's something like, an alternative type of bond. If we were to lose that rating for some reason, it's very difficult to get it back. We've been very fortunate this recently with our utility system, with good financial management. We did get an increased rating there, but historically what I have seen is that at least 5 years you would not see an increase. So you would drop from a AAA to probably a AA or something to that effect.
Gotcha. And I believe that administration is also considering, or at least going to propose to this council, pay increases for, not just, across the board, but especially for our public safety agencies as well, right? And I believe even with the use of ARPA funds to subsidize that going into this upcoming fiscal year.
As the budget was shown earlier, we do propose to use $7 million in ARPA funds for operations. $3 million of that was specifically earmarked for public safety in a prior year, so we will be using those funds to help to pay for this. It's my estimate that of the compensation study, over 40% of this will be going to the Sheriff's Department, the compensation study implementation.
Thank you, Thomas. And let me just say this. I certainly support the men and women in blue. I understand it's a dangerous job. They put their lives on the line. But I've also made it clear that council, I believe, should take a holistic approach when it comes to our public safety apparatus. The Sheriff's Department is very important, and I share your sentiment, Councilman Branham, as far as it being a top priority, but also prioritize the other public safety entities as well, whether it's EMS, Coroner's Office, Solicitor's Office, fire, and the like. For me, I think it'd be prudent for us to wait and to actually see what the comp study is going to tell us with respect to compensation for all of our county employees, which includes the Sheriff's Department. And also, let's see where we are once this 4% COLA kicks in as well. I'm not so certain that increased pay is the panacea. I can tell you the City of Columbia increased pay for their officers 6 months ago. They had 100 vacancies. 6 months later, they may have filled somewhere between 5 to 7 of those vacancies with an uptick in pay. So I'm just not convinced that compensation alone is going to fix, the challenges with recruitment and retention. But on principle alone, I certainly support paying the men and women who protect and serve us on a daily basis with their lives. I certainly support paying them more. I just think it'd be prudent for us to wait and see what the comp study tells us, along with the 4% COLA.
Mr. Chair, just
You recognize Mr. Branham?
Just in closing, I do want to say again, ACA Thomas and Director Deshpande have been extremely helpful to me, not just in relation to this motion, but in my 4 months on council now. And I'm really motivated to hear, not just from them, but from other council members, that there is a collective will to work towards extremely responsible budgeting as we hope to continue to move towards a truly balanced budget where we don't even dip into the fund balance whatsoever. And I really respect the work that they've done to get the fund balance where it is so that we have the credit rating that we have, as was indicated, is very valuable when it comes to borrowing. And so I just want to leave it with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Branham.
If I may, thank you, Mr. Brandon. We appreciate that.
Yeah. All right, any additional comments or questions on this item? All right, Madam Clerk, take the vote. The motion is from Councilman Branham. He amended his original motion to approve $464,000 to the Sheriff's Department to increase deputy starting pay to $50,000. Would that be correct, Councilman Branham?
Yes, Deputy, Master Deputy, Corporal, and Sergeant.
Gotcha. Already been seconded by Councilman Weaver. You recognized, Mr. Livingston?
Well, will $464,000 do that?
Mr. Chair,
You recognize, Mr.
I'm sorry,
Brown.
Councilmember Branham did already communicate after our staff answered and said it may not get everyone, but it will get them closer. So I think the clear distinction was that's an awareness. He's aware and we're aware that it will not take care of all those individuals, but it will get them closer.
Additional questions or discussion? All right, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Branham,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Teratio,
No?
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Walker,
No.
Mackey,
No.
English,
No.
Newton.
No?
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda, on the budget motions list rather, is item 62. This is from general fund, countywide departments. It's a motion to authorize increase in the general fund operating levy by 3 millage points to raise fiscal year sufficient 2024 general fund revenue. Entertain a motion.
So move, Mr. Chair, for approval?
Properly second. Any discussion?
Yes, can we hear from Mr. Deshpande? I'm not sure that this line item is needed in light of my amended motion.
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
not to
Brown
step on the
wanted-
toes of my employee, but correct. This motion was contingent if the council so chose to approve the previous motion. I had met with my staff, and we would not have the ability to fund that request short of that motion that followed it. So we do not need the motion at this time based on your vote.
Drawing?
Yes, sir, we can withdraw the motion.
Okay. You recognize Ms. Newton?
Not sure if this is appropriate or not. I'm just curious, looking at withdrawing this motion, does motion 63 fall within that same category, or would that still be needed?
63 will be needed because that's going to adjust the fund balance.
Thank you.
Okay, so 63, that's also not needed. Or is it needed?
63 is
So
needed.
62 is not needed, 63 is needed. Okay, so item 63, general fund, countywide departments adjust and approve projected use of general fund balance to support overall general fund expenditure as necessary. This will override motion number 38 according to the notes. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
It's moved to properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Branham,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes?
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Who you recognized? Next item on the agenda is item 64, budget motions list. It's special revenue funds, category 4. The fund, a source of funding, special revenue, economic development is department impacted, appropriate revenue and economic expenditure budget of economic development. The dollar amount for the motion is $6,346,000. Entertain a motion. Mr. Pugh?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve items 64 through 81.
Moved and properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Branham,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes?
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the budget motions list is item 82. The sponsor of this motion is Councilman Livingston. The fund is a special revenue fund, department impacted, temporary alcohol permits, approved funding for River Alliance for fiscal year 2024. The expenditure is budgeted in the temporary alcohol permits, and the dollar amount for the motion is $55,000. Entertain a motion.
I move approval.
Second?
Properly second. Any discussion? You recognize Ms. Mackey, then Ms. McBride, then Ms. Teratio, and then Ms. Newton.
I
I'll
just
say it was that
wanted
much.
clarification in the notes. Is this not already included when we voted on 77?
Yeah, it is, but it's outside entity, so we just wanted to have it on those.
So are we approving additional dollar amount or just approving
No, it's just
this
approve the payment,
organization
yeah.
be
Yeah, it's-
included in that amount? So it's not an additional dollar amount?
That's
Is that
right.
correct?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, Ms. McBride, then Ms. Teratio, then Ms. Newton, then Ms. Barron.
Okay, it's answered.
Okay. Good, Ms. Teratio, then Ms. Barron.
Thank you. So you would think I would know this, having done this as many times as we have. I guess I would just ask why the River Alliance allocation is coming out of temporary alcohol permits. Is that how we've always done it?
Yes.
Stop. I'm being laughed at.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was not.
Monday?
Yeah, I do not know the historical decision behind that. Maybe Mr. Livingston can shed a light on that.
Back when, 100 years ago, when the city of Columbia election and county and Richland County formed the River Alliance, we all were asked to put in a certain amount of money, and it's been $55,000 since that time. And the county was trying to figure out a way to identify its funding source for that, and it took it out of that funding source, and it's just been there forever. And it's a department agreement between those three governmental entities to fund the River Alliance.
Ms. Barron?
Thank you.
All right.
So we're not funding alcohol and such. Because when I saw it, it just tickles me. I mean, it's really to fund the River Alliance organization. We're just getting the money from that pot. We just really have to say that out loud, because it looks like we're throwing a big party.
No, it's always been, even I confirm with Director Hamley, it's always came from that particular part instead of the general fund or some other funds here.
No comments. All right, Ms. Mackey?
Mr. Chair, just in the effort of, fairness tonight, we've talked a lot about different organizations and how they've been funded. And I do understand, based off Mr. Livingston's recollection, that River Alliance has been funded via temporary alcohol permits, as he says, over 100 years. However, I would like if we could find said agreement. And if not, I really think we as a body should determine how and why that is happening so that we can continue to be transparent and open with all of our nonprofits, because if we're giving to River Alliance out of temporary alcohol permits? Are there other organizations that we could have given to out of the same fund or not? And so I just think, I know not all of us have this same institutional knowledge as Mr. Livingston. I greatly appreciate it, but I would love to just also see it myself. Thank you.
Additional comments? All right, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham,
Yes?
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
No.
Livingston,
Yes?
Teratio,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
No.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
No?
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right, next item on the budget motions list, this is category 5, debt service. Item 83, debt service fund, general obligation debt, appropriate funding to fund debt service. And the dollar amount for the motion is $20,124,222. I entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
You recognize Ms. Newton.
thank you. I move to approve motions 83 through 92.
Second.
Properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride, Livingston, Teratio,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is item 93 on the budget motions list, category 6, capital improvement plan. This is coming from the Capital Projects Fund. Department impacted, countywide departments. Approved multi-year comprehensive capital improvement plan as presented in the fiscal year 2024 budget. Recommended budget book is fiscal year 2024 through fiscal year 2027. And the dollar amount for the motion is $240,547,724. Entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second?
Moved to properly second. Any discussion? There being none.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, Madam Vice Chair.
I'm
you
sorry, and I'll be
recognize.
quick because I know we're trying to, but I did just want to point out, I'm not sure if the public can see, but there are it's a list of improvements, and I'm grateful to see that we're working across the board with many, many departments to update some capital improvements because I know many of our departments need a lot of this. So thank you to the staff for pulling all this together and just figuring out a way to make it happen.
Thank you. Madam Vice Chair. Additional discussion. All right, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham,
Yes?
McBride, Pugh,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes?
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right, next item on the budget motions list is item 94, some motion sponsored by Councilman Branham and Weaver. The fund is to capital projects, department impacted, countywide departments, approved funding to conduct an updated feasibility study in fiscal year 2024 to construct a new Richland County Judicial Center. The study would include proposals as to budgeting and procuring financing for the cost to purchase land as needed and for complete construction. The study should include components for the possibility of completing a judicial center in 2 or more phases and 2 or more builders, and it should recommend areas for locating the center. And the dollar amount for this motion is $100,000. Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Move to properly second. Any discussion? You recognize Mr. Livingston and then Mr. ACO and then Ms. English.
Yes, and actually I support doing a feasibility study for a courthouse. Where did the $100,000 come from? Is that reasonable? Is that what it costs to do it? I'm just concerned about how to come to the amount.
I believe that was an amount associated with a previous study, Mr. Livingston. So in terms of whether or not that amount would still be accurate today, that would be a good initial cost estimate.
ACO.
Just wondering when the last feasibility study was done. How old is the?
2018.
Okay, thank you.
Then Ms. Newton, then Ms. Mackey.
I'm just needing clarification. I know I'm working on these courthouses and stuff. Is this not a part of that package that we've been working on?
So the council hasn't, as a part of any discussions or strategic plan, we did not prioritize the capital project to include the courthouse. So that hasn't been something that we've actually done at this point.
Thank you, sir.
Newton, Mackey, and then Livingston.
Thank you. So and this was new to me, so we've previously done a feasibility study for the courthouse that in 2018, which is now invalid because we waited. So is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, I would say. that in short
Sorry, so just confirming. So I guess from my perspective, it's clear that we need to address our courthouse. I guess my concern here would be, because we've said we're going to do these other capital projects first, that if we expend dollars and then it's delayed and then we have to do it again, then we've not wasted money for one feasibility study, we wasted money for two feasibility studies. So I guess my recommendation is, can we get closer to where we're ready to act and then do the feasibility study then? So I guess that would be the question that I would pose to the body. And then at any point, we've kicked off DSS, we've looked at our budget, we're ready, we can make a motion to find the funds then, as we do for other studies. So I'm going to vote no on this motion because I don't want to waste another study. And also, given what's happening with building costs and how things are changing, I would just rather us be able to get, the best estimates and the best numbers when we're ready to move in that direction. So fully support the need for a courthouse, as well as the emergency call center that we're doing, DSS, all those other things. I just want to make sure we do this at the right time. So I'm going to vote no. Thank you.
Mackey, Livingston, and then Mr. Branham.
Thank you. Two things. One, I guess just to confirm, based off the last vote that we did related to the Sheriff's Department, I was at the impression that we were at our maxed amount. And so if we were to approve this, wouldn't this take us over our threshold that we said that we wanted to stay around? That's number one. It's not true.
Ms. Mackey, or Mr. Chair, if I may.
You recognize, Mr.
Ms. Mackey, that is actually a fund that we have set aside for capital improvements because it is related to a capital project. We could take that fund from the capital projects fund, assigned fund.
And just to clarify, that current balance is?
Generally, I think it was $11.5 million. We contribute to that on an annual basis now.
Thank you. And my second, statement would be looking at just planning as a whole, and Administrator Brown pointed to it, we as a body have not prioritized. And I think doing this study right now is premature. We really should look and as a body discuss in a committee what are our priorities. We have begun with DSS, we call it the Family Services Center, the 911, emergency operations. Those are things that we've been, the detention center. So we have several large capital projects that we are working on right now. And I think as a body, we should probably spend some time talking about what our priorities are next or upcoming instead of spending the money right now on a feasibility study. When as a body, we might decide that maybe the courthouse is not the next one. Maybe it's just like how we did these four, maybe it's another four, and we go ahead and collectively start them all at once instead of doing a feasibility study now. That, again, might be outdated when the time comes.
Thank you. Mr. Branham, and then Mr. Livingston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a general statement, I want to say I have been so heartened coming on to County Council this year at the strategic planning that has taken place with this council. And I know Ms. Mackey's had a lot to do with that, leading out on that. I'm super pleased to see all of the facilities that are lined up to be replaced. And it's really going to help us step up as a county the level of service we provide to citizens and the people that require the county services. and I look over the calendar for years to come, and I see how long it takes for these projects to be completed. That's one reason why I'm seeking an updated feasibility study now. The other two key components, in my opinion, to my request are, number one, help us find a location so that potentially we can secure property, raw land, and you know, in the event we find something that's advantageous. The second is to include, again, the potential to build it in 2 or more phases or 2 or more buildings, because I want to be mindful of the fact that we have debt limits that we need to stay under. And I think potentially a 2-phase approach might help us do that over multiple years to come. Thank you.
Brandon. Livingston.
And you, all friend limit up to 100.
I'm comfortable with that.
Have your hand up? Okay, you did not. Okay. Any additional discussion or questions? Well, and Mr. Branham, I certainly agree, with the need for a feasibility study regarding, a new courthouse. I guess I sort of side with Ms. Newton here and Ms. Mackey, which is a study being done now or maybe next year. Perhaps that is just, premature, and we may run the risk of spending $100,000 for a study that may be, outdated or obsolete by the time we're ready to actually move, on a new courthouse. And so certainly agree with the need to do one, but I think I know I would feel more comfortable supporting a feasibility study once we are ready to actually take some action and proceed with building a new courthouse. And I think Ms. Mackey was very eloquent in stating, all the other capital projects that have taken priority at this point. I know I've had conversations with colleagues of mine over at the Richland County Bar, and I've outlined for them, just the other capital improvement projects that are on council's radar at the moment. But I've also assured them that we are going to get to a new courthouse soon. But obviously we can't build a courthouse, but at the same time we're trying to improve the jail. Pay for it, I should say, the funding for it, while we're trying to improve the jail, the Family Services Center, along with the 911 call center as well. So the courthouse is certainly important to me. It is a priority, but I just think that the feasibility study, at least at this moment, may just be a tad premature, because I think we just run the risk of its findings being obsolete by the time we're ready to move on it, no different than the 2018 study. So I certainly support your request. I just think that at this time, I don't believe it's ripe for consideration at this time. Any other discussion on this item? Ms. McBride?
Mr. Chair, I just want to go on record as supporting Mr. Branham's motion, but not at this time also, and I concur with other things that have already been said.
And I'm quite sure this won't be the last time that Mr. Branham raises the motion. So you got a fellow lawyer on council with you as well. So, all right, if there's no further discussion, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Branham,
Yes.
Pugh,
No.
McBride,
No.
Livingston,
Yes.
Teratio,
No?
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Walker,
No.
Mackey,
No?
English,
No.
Newton.
No?
Motion fails.
Next item on the budget motions list is under Category 7, Enterprise. This is item 95. It's coming from, this is the Enterprise Revenue Fund. Department impacted is the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund, approved 5%. And the landfill's rate schedule for the fiscal year 2024, as presented by the department in the council budget work session on April 20th, 2023. That dollar amount for the motion is $1,461,054. Entertain a motion. You recognize, Mr. Weaver?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If it's appropriate, I'd make a motion that we go ahead and approve 95 through 102.
Second.
Moved and properly second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, if I
You
could.
recognize Mr. Acio.
Okay, thanks. Could I just get some clarification on the appropriateness of the funding for Keep the Midlands Beautiful out of solid waste? Have we done that before? Okay.
Well,
I'm getting some nods, so.
Yes, ma'am.
well, let's get the motion seconded
Oh,
for
sorry,
discussion.
I'll second it.
All right, for discussion.
Barron seconded.
It has been
okay.
seconded for discussion?
Okay,
Okay, all right. My bad.
it's been a night, right? Yeah, just wanted to get some clarity on that.
The answer is yes, that is normally where that funding has come from.
Okay. Ms. Newton, and then Ms. Mackey, and then Mr. Brown.
So what I'm observing, I appreciate you recognizing me over here, but Ms. Mackey actually did have her hand up first, so I'll yield.
Oh, Ms. Newton, we're already over
We'll
there
do
with
it.
you.
I will
Just
do it. Perfect. So looking at the solid waste, and I appreciate the information that we had in the work session, I would just appreciate someone expressing what the impact is to our taxpayers.
someone state that for Ms. Newton.
Yeah, so where's my,
And I know that some of the numbers were interesting because of,
I just had.
yes.
So it's a point, it's a 0.3 mil increase from landfill from 3.6 to 3.9, and the impact would be 100,000 on the 100,000 legal resident property, which will be $1.2,
Okay.
and the non-legal commercial property, it will be $1.80.
Thank you.
And I would just add, I don't want to speak for the auditor's office, but for the car, 20,000 car, it will be 36 cents. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome, Ms. Newton. Ms. Mackey, then Mr. Branham, and then Ms. McBride.
Thank you. And just same lines of just question before. So the funding for Keep Midlands Beautiful out of solid waste, was that the $42,900, was that amount they requested? Is that amount that we came up with? And how is it determined that that is an appropriate use of that fund?
So the 42,900, the figure came from their ask letter, so they requested that amount. What my understanding about is, because there is synergy between what the solid waste line of business and what the Keep Midlands Beautiful does, basically does a lot of beautification of the roads, and so there is a operational and kind of strategic synergy between the line of business. Hence, the funding comes from that pot of money. And we can look it up. We can review that if you're interested in that.
And I'm gonna ask a follow-up question. I know you don't work in any of these divisions, but if I could understand the request and saying that this amount, the 42,000, is that them cleaning a certain area? If they got more money, would they clean more roads? Or is this just, I guess I would like to know how this amount came to be. Meaning if we gave them more, would they do more trash collection or litter cleanup?
We have Director Maloney. He may have a better answer than what I have.
Hopefully. May we recognize?
You recognize Director Maloney. Go ahead.
Sir, Keep America Beautiful, started by Lady Bird Johnson, I believe. Keep America Beautiful in our chapter with Midlands is really they provide bags and sponsorships. So they'll get a group of students together to do it. Our special service will often coordinate and pick up the bags after they collect it. But they're more about getting the word out, and so that's our participation from our county that they collectively put together for the Midlands, and they have a limited staff for what they do. Thank you.
Else? Questions from anyone?
Just one more follow-up, just for note, don't have to answer tonight, but is there any other partnerships that we've considered outside of Keep the Midlands Beautiful? I have to answer tonight.
I'm not aware of, but we can find out, yeah.
Right, and then, okay, Mr. Branham, and then Ms. Barron.
I just want to make sure, so there, if we vote yes for this, there's no additional impact to the recommended budget.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to speak to my motion, and that is, I've partnered with Palmetto Pride as well as Keep the Midlands Beautiful in the past with the cleanups. And so when you think about this organization, those are the organizations, if you decide to, do a cleanup in your community, they provide you everything you need in order to be successful on that day. Trash bags, the grabbers, gloves, and even orange vest at no cost to the residents, and you can do it as many times as you like. And then our solid waste team, we coordinate with them, and they come and pick up the bags for us. So, this is something that I saw that was important to keep going. We saw how important it was during COVID when we no longer had the inmates to come out and help us keep our streets clean. And so their importance is greatly needed for us to continue to fund them. And we're a portion of their funding. They're a Midlands organization, so they get other funding from other sources. Thank you.
Additional questions or discussion? All right, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston, Teratio,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes?
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right, next item on the agenda is item 5, adjournment.
So moved.
All right, it's been moved to second multiple times. It's non-debatable. Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Brenham,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion, approved.
Motion approved. Adjourned.